Welcome to Speaking of Higher Ed, Conversations on Teaching and Learning. I'm your host, Jeff Mastromonaco. We release new episodes the third Wednesday of each month. Please listen, like, and subscribe. This is episode 29, and today my guest is Dr. Meredith Rausch, and we will be discussing using the principles of improv in the classroom. I'm really excited about today's episode because we've got a guest whose path brings together two worlds that you might not expect to collide, higher ed and improv. Joining me is Dr. Meredith Rausch. She studied public speaking and community counseling at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater and earned her PhD in counselor education and supervision from the University of Iowa. She's now an associate professor in the College of Education and Human Development at Augusta University. But there's a twist. She also trained in improvisational comedy at the Second City in Chicago. You may recognize Second City as the improv comedy troupe that helped launch the careers of Tina Fey, Stephen Colbert, Steve Carell, Amy Poehler, and Bill Murray. Today, she's going to talk to us about how the principles of improv can support faculty in the classroom, not just to keep students engaged, but to help us teach with more flexibility, presence, and connection. Dr. Rausch, welcome to Speaking of Higher Ed.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. So we like to start by asking our guests to talk a little bit about the journey and the path that led them to Augusta University.
Oh, okay. So I graduated from Iowa, and I wanted an area that was more diverse. I don't know if you're familiar with Iowa, but I wanted warm weather. I wanted different kinds of people, more things to do. Checkbox, yes. I had one child at the time. And so I was looking southeast, and I had settled on a university. I, was going to go on the campus tour, which is the final part of your interview. But I just didn't have a great feeling about it. And one of my advisors had met with a professor from here at AAU at a conference and said, I don't know, I think you should she has a opening, just have a phone call with her. I said, okay, sure. So I did. And I fell in love with her. We're still tremendous friends today. And I thought, oh, I don't know. I have this other that's pretty much a done deal. And she's like, just come to campus. So I came to campus, fell in love with the professors, fell in love with the campus, fell in love with the program. And that's it. Moved here. It's been 10 years.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. Great. Well, we're glad to have you here.
Thanks.
So before we dive into improv and education, can you tell us how you first got involved with improv and what led you to study at Second City?
Yes. So you're going to realize it's all about connections for me. So my uncle, Bill, is one of my greatest mentors of all time. And for whatever reason, he took me under his wing, and he would say, he lived in Chicago at the time. He said, you know what, Meredith, I think you should take this speaking degree, and I think you should learn about sports, because I think the next big thing is going to be female sportscasters on the sidelines. I said, you're nuts. And so I didn't do it. And guess what happens? It exploded. So I said, whatever Bill tells me to do, I'm going to do it. And I still do whatever he tells me to do. If he tells me to read a book, I'm going to read a book. If he tells me to do something. So he said, hey, Second City is accepting applications so you can get trained there. So you can actually spend a year. You can spend more than a year training there. You can get certificates in writing for TV. You can get it in improv, comedy, et cetera. So I did it in improvisational theater. I spent the full year and did all the sections for that. But I applied not thinking I would get in or thinking I would get waitlisted. But they said, yeah, you get in. And that's where it started. So once a week, I drove down. It was a couple hours from where I lived, and I would go spend the night with my comedy troupe, my improv troupe, and we would practice all these games, learn everything, and then we would have shows at the Second City, which is on Wells Street, it's famous theater in Chicago. We would do that once every sort of semester, which we had 5 semesters throughout a year. So yeah, it was amazing.
So what made you start thinking about using improv in your teaching?
Yeah. So I was trying to think about why. Why did I start this? And I teach people how to be counselors. And one thing about counseling is that you cannot have an agenda, right? I'm an agenda gal. I like organization. I like to know what I'm going to be doing so I can be prepared. But you can't do that. Things are so off the cuff in counseling. And so we get these students who come in and they think, oh, if I think we're going to talk about this and if they veer off from that, I won't know what to do. And then they panic, and then they're not functioning at the best, and they're not helping their client effectively. And I thought, I was working on a presentation for the day, and I thought, this really reminds me of a game. I thought, what if I just have them try it? Like just a basic game and see what happens. And so I told them about the main tenets of improv, which really lend themselves to, well, I would argue the whole world, but they really lend themselves to kind of being flexible and not being afraid of like taking appropriate risks and things. And so I tried it out and it went well. And then they asked, well, can we do improv again? And I said, let me work on it. Because I didn't want to just throw in games. Mm-hmm. I wanted each game to have a specific reason, a specific purpose to help them build their skills. And so after each game, I'll say, all right, you know what I'm going to ask you? Why this game? Why today? Why this subject? And then they have to sort it out. And sometimes they come up with answers I hadn't even thought of, but they're always, kind of picking that up and thinking about it. Even the people who never participate or come up front, they're thinking about it. So it was really just a try on a whim and see if it works. And it landed. So that was good.
So for people who think that improv is just comedy, how would you describe it as a teaching tool? And you have a little bit, but what kind of skills or mindsets do you think it helps students develop?
There's so many. So we know that people have been doing improvisational theater for, I don't know, centuries. But in the 60s, we had this woman come forward and say, and I brought it because I don't want to get it wrong. She said, it's Viola Spolin. She said, we learn through experience and experiencing. And no one teaches anyone anything. You learn yourself, right? And I believe that too.
Experiential learning. Yeah.
I love experiential learning. I want to get in there and do it, right? There's certain things, it'd be pretty tough to figure out how to make it experiential, but I want them to think about it. And I want them to think, oh yeah, Dr. Rausch was teaching me this, and that's when we played that game. And then they're making the connections, right? And so it solidifies that learning for them. So there's a bunch of things. Even for folks, we have lots of folks who say that I have no desire to get up in front of my classmates and do this. That's fine. There's no grade for it. There's no grade for it. I'm a shy person. Improv has taught me
Sounds like somebody's lying, but I don't know.
Improv has taught me how to come out of my shell and not be afraid to appear flawed or to not worry about what if I say something wrong, right? And so I know that there are those folks in the classroom, and they get to be those folks, right? And someday they might raise their hand, and I've had that happen, and it's amazing. And they say, I'm so glad I took the risk. I'm like, I know, I'm so glad you took it. But the audience does things like call outs. So I'll say, all right, give me a place that you go during the week, grocery store, school, work, right? So they're giving us call outs. So no matter what, that's kind of a low risk, right? You just shout out a word. There's noticing things. Ooh, I'm seeing them. Look at how they looked at them when they said that. When you're up there, your job is to look at how people are responding to you so that you can do something next. And the whole purpose is to make movement that's supportive. If I'm on stage with you, I want to give you every softball so that you look good. I want to give you something that I know that you got a line for, that you can react to, because we want to look good. We want each other to look good. It's not about who's the spotlight. There is no spotlight. It's all about the group. And so that's our classroom, right? Mm-hmm. The group is so much more powerful as a unit. We can have so many more experiences, so many more ideas. We can go farther, have more resources, and collaborate when it's together, rather than some superstar who raises their hand 100 times, right? That's not what we're going for. So there's flexibility. Relax into it. There's support each other, make everyone look good. Everyone is responsible for that support. So even if yours is just a head nod or right? That's supporting, and you can do that without risk. There's become immune to mistakes. Reduce perfectionism. I teach all graduate level students. We have lots of folks who are perfectionists. I get that. It's high anxiety, high stress, wanting to look good. What if you still look good because you stopped caring so much about what could go wrong and just enter it and see where it ends up, right? I tell my students, even if it goes totally wrong, it's going to be a hilarious story. right? Sometimes the hilarious stories are more important than what you actually did. There's reacting to new situations with enthusiasm. So one of the main tenets is yes and. Mm-hmm. If I ask you a question and you say no, the conversation halts. I have to think of something else, right? If you say yes and, now we have movement. Now we have a place to go. So I want them to practice saying yes. You think about, you get home from work, you get home from your studies, and you think, I'm just going to put on Netflix. I'm going to zone out. Cool. Your friend texts, hey, you want to meet us at the book tavern? You want to meet us at wherever? It's easy to say, nah, I think I'm just going to relax. Practice just for one day saying yes to that stuff, as long as it's, I'm
tired when I get it. Yeah.
We are tired. We are tired, but we also hold ourselves back. I do this. I like routine. Sometimes spontaneity freaks me out. I like to get in my sweats and hang out. But that's not the meaning we make from life, right? We don't look back on our life and say, I'm so glad I sat on my couch and did all that, or that I binge watched Netflix. I still believe in that. That's still powerful to have relaxation. But it's when people call you and say, hey, you want to go do this? Right? I told you about this half marathon I'm running that I have no business running. Yeah, and I just say yes.
Crazy talk, but yeah.
Yeah, I probably will throw up. I don't care. It will be a great story. And it's a connection, right? And so saying yes to new things, getting out of the habit of saying no. We say no, or we say yes, but. Just the next time you try talking to someone, when you hear yourself looking to say but, shift it up and just say yes and see how much further it takes you. So all of those things are huge.
Yeah, I actually have two sons who are theater kids, and each has a T-shirt that says yes and on it. So that's the thing in our household for sure.
It's powerful. Yeah. It is. And when you catch yourself kind of getting into that, your whole life changes, right? Like I have become so it's become a habit to just try new stuff, Yes, and I see it wear off on my kids. Hey, my daughter's 6. Do you want to try squid? Sure. Right? Do you want to go to this place and touch a stingray? Yeah. And if they hate it, they hate it, but they still tried it, right? And so it's doing that for the class and helping them get more aware of how often they say no and close doors in their learning and in their life.
I can see a lot of parallels with this, and my area of expertise is gamification.
Yes.
And so I can see where it's very similar in that, it creates that level of engagement. It does offer you the opportunity to fail, which I think is what you mentioned too, allowing students to fail and try something different and being comfortable with that. So, speaking of comfort, some students, I would imagine, feel nervous or shy about improv. How do you help them ease into that?
100%. And sometimes I'm nervous about who goes up there, right? So it's all about the support. It's all about setting the kind of boundary that this does not. The funny thing is that improv doesn't actually, it's not even supposed to be funny. It just usually ends up being funny. So I encourage them just to go up and just see what happens. Right? If it's a dud, it's a dud. But most of the time, it's not. I'm giving them feedback. I'm cutting off their improv game when it hits a high note, and then we're done, and then we move on. Making sure that people know, hey, support each other. Watch them. Give them tips, or give them a softball, or everybody's just trying to have fun. And at the very least, you're not listening to me lecture you for 5-10 minutes. It has to be better than lecture. And they all jump on board. I mean, I've been doing it for over 10 years, and I've never had it just fall flat. And you did teach me gamification.
Oh, okay, great. Well, and again, as you're talking through it, I see all these parallels. I imagine that when you're talking this through with faculty, again, a lot like gamification, it probably falls a little flat, or I don't know that I'm, ready for this, or I don't know that this is effective, even though it's been shown to be effective. So for faculty who are new to this, what's a simple improv strategy or activity that they could try in their next class? Maybe something low stakes just to get started.
Right. I can understand teachers and educators, we think, oh, another thing on my plate.
This is fun.
Right.
Education's not fun. I mean, the classroom is not supposed to be fun. And I think that's a lot of what you get. I know with gamification, and I could just imagine with improv as well.
Right. What learning objectives are we accomplishing, right? So there are ways to, especially for the folks who really are concerned about what am I teaching? There's a couple I thought of. One is called the ABC game. So if you were studying for a test, let's say I'm teaching history, and the kids are studying for a test, we bring up, you can do 2 students, you can do 5 students, it doesn't matter. You can have as many as you want. You could go around the room actually so that they can remain seated, which is very comfortable for folks. And they have to give a word or a sentence that starts with the next letter in the alphabet. So maybe I say, okay, for this lesson, we're going to study for this upcoming quiz, which is on World War II. And so you have to talk about your word or your sentence has to be something that aligns with what we studied, right? And if you get Q or X, right, we're going to help you out. So then we're getting things to help them think about things in a different way, right? Because sometimes they get so focused on a test answer. Now we're thinking about it globally. And they can do that. So they can go A, B, C, D, E. Then there's another one called the game of questions. You can also use this to study or to just summarize what you've already learned. So you have 2 people up in front of the classroom, and everything that they say to each other has to be in question format. Okay. So did you study for tomorrow's test? Ooh, is that the test on math? I don't know. Was it on math or was it on Spanish? Right? So we have to think about it in a different way. Do you know what they're talking about with algorithms? Are algorithms a thing? Right? So we're thinking things through in a different way, but we're adding it into a question. I like to do ding, say it again. So you have a group of folks and you might say, okay, these folks are in English class and they're studying Romeo and Juliet. And so I want them to reenact a scene from Romeo and Juliet as if it were in 2025. And so they start going, and then I hit my ding on my phone, just a bell, and I say it again. And they have to say something totally different than the last sentence they said. So maybe they said, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo? And then I say, ding, say it again. They're like, yo, Romeo, where you at? Right? Or, hey, you up? Right? It's different ways of saying things.
So say it again, but in a different way.
Yes.
Okay.
And just to get you into that flexibility, or to think, what was Juliet trying to convey? And how might that look in different ways? Right? And that can just get really silly too. And then the other one that I really like that's really easy is called Make It Quick. So you might say, okay, we just got done learning about the scientific properties of whatever. I want you to act this out. In 60 seconds, give me the whole summary of what we learned today on the properties of water or the properties of soil. So you get the group of folks up and they have 60 seconds to do everything. And they say, cool, make it quick. Do everything you just did, but now in 30 seconds. So now they have to think about what were the main ideas we talked about and how do I pare that down? And they say, do it in 15 seconds. Now they pare it down even more. And then 1 second. What is the overall gist, right? It might just be water or soil, but it's just to get them thinking about how do we look at it on a bigger scale, and then how do we pare it down to what's the most important part if we're studying this lesson. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
And it's actually low input from the teacher or professor. We're simply organizing it and then letting them get creative. We can also gauge how well did this come across? How well are they grasping these concepts, right? And so let's say you did make it quick on soil, the properties of soil. Awesome. What pieces would you have added in if you were up here? And why, right? So, they didn't mention anything about this.
I had this cold sweat moment that you're actually asking me.
I'm not asking you. I couldn't tell you if you were right.
Okay.
I wouldn't do that to you because the goal is to make you look good. If it's something that you know, music, theater, gamification, I would ask you because I know you know the answer. right? Or I know that you can expound on something. I'm not going to ask you something that I have no idea if you know. That wouldn't be fair. And then you just get dejected.
Sure.
That is not, we don't want that to happen in an educational classroom. We don't want folks to be scared to talk. We don't want them to be afraid they don't know the answer. So if you say, soil, is that like dirt? Yes. And where might we find dirt? Right? So we're taking, so nobody's going to have a wrong answer.
Outside.
It is outside.
I got it. Hearing all these things, do you have maybe a story of when you tried to implement these, or that you might have had some challenges in bringing this into the classroom?
Yes. So with gamification, I did take the classes here at Augusta University. So I thought, well, I can make up my own games that are similar to the properties of improv. And so I have one where I teach crisis class, and in a crisis, you can have some people saying some wild things to you, and you can have some wild things going on. But our job is to not make someone feel scared or judged when they're in that. So we just have to kind of maintain a regular flat face with it so that they feel accepted and they know that they're heard and they're not in trouble or whatever it is. And so I thought, well, let's get the Bean Boozled game where the jelly beans taste terrible. And let's have folks up here and they'll all agree on a color like blue. And then they have to counsel someone role play counsel someone who's in a crisis, who's in the classroom, while chewing it. And we have to decide whether or not they had the bad tasting jelly bean. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so the goal is to, no matter what flavor that is, that I'm helping you out. Well, one poor student got 3 jelly beans back to back that were all the really bad one, like dirty dishwater and soil and rotten fish. And she was such a trooper, but she couldn't take it. She ended up spitting it out in the garbage, but like gagging. And I thought, okay, maybe we need to dial this back. Maybe this should be a little bit different, or they only do 1 jelly bean at a time. So that was one where I felt like it failed. However, I checked in with the student after class, making sure that she was okay. But I said, well, do you regret coming up and doing this? No. So even when it goes bad, I still think that there's something in it where students feel proud of themselves for taking the chance and taking the opportunity. So that would be the one where I think, well, maybe wouldn't repeat that one.
Well, so are there any common mistakes that you see when people first try to use these improv techniques in teaching? And are there ways to avoid those problems? Yeah.
So I think being too concerned about where it's going to go, being too concerned that it's not teaching enough of the lesson, I would say that that's part of the educator portion where they might feel uncomfortable with it. Also knowing when to stop the action. Sometimes when we have something and it's going really well, we let it play out and then it kind of fizzles. You want to stop it right at the best part, the most vibrant or the funniest, then we're going to stop it there. So sometimes not knowing that. For students, it's not being accustomed to sharing the spotlight, to trying to make everybody look good. So sometimes you'll just have someone trying to tell jokes or get kind of inappropriate humor. Actually, improv, you're not allowed to swear and you're not allowed to use inappropriate humor. So that's, lots of people don't know that. So if you set that right away, then that can help curb that. But just reminding folks, this is about making everybody look good, right? And about helping us learn, or helping us just even have 5 minutes of not lecture. So those are the things that I think are a little, maybe troubleshooting helps in the beginning, but it never is really awful.
So thinking more broadly, how could an improvisational mindset help change or improve higher education as a whole?
Oh my gosh, how much time do you have? So I think higher education in general, we love a good policy. We love a good, this is how we've done it in the past. And sometimes that really serves us. And sometimes we're not growing and changing the way that we need to grow and change for our students and for our campus. And so just teaching ourselves to say yes or to be flexible. I think as an educator, I've done it for over 10 years, and sometimes I get stuck in the way that I've taught things, and I need to remind myself that it's okay to switch it up. I think that those are important. I think also just the idea of having an improv troupe on campus, or having even, we have the Second City players will come around and you can hire them to come on campus. Just having that sense of like support, connection, goofiness. We are so dedicated to getting our doctorates or to publishing papers or presenting.
Which is not goofy at all, yeah.
It's not goofy. It is the opposite of goofy. It's strict and rigid. And I do my work. I research all the time and write. But you have to have that outlet, right? That creative outlet and that ability to just, let go. And I think that we work when we work, but it's okay to not take ourselves so seriously. That is a piece that I think higher ed could really benefit from.
And something else you said occurred to me where you were talking about how, the goal when you're going through these exercises is for everybody. You're almost like working towards a common goal, which is to get whatever, the learning objective is, but all to work together.
Yeah.
Again, like gamification, we've created escape room scenarios where the goal is like patient-centered care or something like that, but all working together toward the same goal. So I could see how just having that mindset, whatever the activity is that you create in the classroom would really be beneficial to the student, and helping just teaching them to work together and to listen to each other, it sounds like.
Yes. And, I'll have a student, I'm thinking of one in particular who doesn't share at all the whole semester. And that's fine. I don't grade on participation because of my shyness. But one day I said, we've got this improv coming up, and I don't tell them what it is because I want them to really just volunteer to volunteer. And so the first person to volunteer gets to pick what role they want to play. And I remember she raised her hand and I thought, are you actually raising your hand? So I said, I didn't want to freak out. So I said, awesome, come on up. So after class, I stopped her and said, I never thought that you would volunteer. She said, I think about it when I go home from class and I wish I would have the guts to do it. And so I just did it. And I'm like, I'm so proud of you. Are you proud of yourself? She said, yeah, it felt great. It wasn't as bad as I thought. And then I see other students who never talk together, and they'll go up and say, that was awesome. Or you inspired me now to raise my hand and volunteer. That to me is like, talk about building a community, talk about building support. That's what we need when we're studying and taking exams.
Yeah, and it definitely helps you remember that the goal isn't always the content. There's other holistic things, that we're trying to teach the students and make them grow and be better people and everything. So I could see how this really would contribute to that.
Right. How well do you learn when you feel isolated?
Right.
COVID taught us that, right? We don't. We want to have somebody else. So now maybe that student who went up and said, hey, that was awesome. Maybe now the students will say, hey, do you want to share papers so we can edit them together? Or, hey, we're going here. Why don't you come with us? Right? It offers this opportunity to expand, which is what improv is all about.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back with our continuing the conversation question.
Awesome. Thanks.
Got a teaching idea worth sharing? Share it on AU Teaching Commons. We are Augusta University's first peer-reviewed hub of open teaching resources by faculty for faculty. Share your knowledge, help your peers, impact students. Visit us at guides.augusta.edu/AU Teaching Commons.
We're back, and we are going to ask our continuing the conversation question. If someone listening today wanted to learn more, are there any courses, books, or other resources that you would recommend to help them get started with improv in the classroom?
100%. So in Augusta, we have Le Chat Noir, and they offer classes. I think some are on Friday night. Or you can just go watch people do improv. I think that that's a great idea because it sparks that idea, that it sparks that interest in it. And then you start to see how it's working. And then maybe you align it with, how could I use this in my classroom? The other part is watching Whose Line Is It Anyway? Old reruns of that. My son watches that. He's 10. He thinks it's hilarious, right? And so it kind of just helps people develop those skills just by watching. You can go to Improv Olympic. You can go to the Second City. They have several places around the United States. You can watch Saturday Night Live, whatever you would like to do. Saturday Night Live is scripted. However, it comes from these ideas, and sometimes it does go off script. There are some books that are specific to using improv in the educational classroom. One is The Second City has one. You can buy it online. I looked this morning. It's the Second City Guide to Improv in the Classroom. There's a book called Teaching Improv, The Essential Handbook. And then there's The Improv Mindset by Keith Jones. If you were just wondering, well, what is this about? Or how, maybe I don't like the idea of games, but maybe I like the idea of a supportive environment in my classroom. Maybe I start there. I promise you, if you start there, you're going to end up using improv in your classroom. It's all about taking that first step, saying yes, trying it out. I definitely teach improv for professional development. I'm going to California tomorrow because I'm teaching educators out there how to use it in the classroom. People want to learn this. They tend to be fun professional developments to earn continuing ed credits. But just start. Put your toe in and see where it goes.
And I think you also here at Augusta University are going to be leading a faculty learning community on leading improv. I don't know if you want to talk just a little bit about that.
Yes, for the Provost Academy, I will be doing little sessions to help learn how we can implement these in our classrooms. We'll be using a text just to help guide us. But I really want to get to know the people in my learning community so that I can directly provide specific examples for them, because I want it to not just be this broad idea. Sometimes it takes people knowing exactly what to do in step-by-step order first to start to become comfortable with it.
So before we finish, are there any ways that our listeners can connect with you, maybe on social media? Or?
Yes, I'm on all the social medias. I have a YouTube channel where I do an improv of a NFL coach, Dan Campbell from the Detroit Lions. That's pretty fun. But I also have a lot on mental health therapy type things, different sorts of acting things that are on there. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok. Just Meredith Rausch. Come find me.
Okay, great. And we will have those links in our show notes for this episode. Well, thank you for listening, and you can continue the conversation and connect with us on Facebook at facebook.com/AUGCII. You can visit our show page at augusta.edu/innovation to access resources discussed in this episode. We release new episodes the third Wednesday of each month in spring and fall semesters. Speaking of Higher Ed is produced by the Center for Instructional Innovation at Augusta University.